Hey everyone, I hope all of you are doing well. I know that it's a little late, but I decided I was going to hop on here and do a little live chat for a little bit. Okay, let me get the chat pulled up. Okay, so talking about astrology, talking about natal charts, and everything that kind of entails. So, I actually have some paperwork with me right now, and I have this on hand. I actually just got done with a session with a client, and it was a really good session, and I kind of just want to share some tidbits because when I was talking with my client when we were doing their natal chart reading, I was also they were interested in learning how to read natal charts. And so I figured it would be a good idea to hop on here and talk about that with some of you guys. And once again, I know it's late. So, you know, if you're not into doing the whole natal chart astrology thing, um, come back another time if it's too late for you. But when we're talking about natal charts, I think it's really important to remember that, you know, a lot of people, when it comes to astrology, um, they will really primarily focus on the sun sign. And the sun sign is what most people tend to think of when they hear about astrology. Their sun sign is primarily what they decide to look at their daily horoscope for. Their sun sign is a lot of times what they form their identity around, whether the person is into astrology themselves, whether the person is, into paganism and witchcraft, and, um, whether the person tends to be interested in stuff that is kind of in that realm, or not, or maybe the person really doesn't know anything about astrology, aside from the fact that they know they were born during this time. So that's supposed to kind of mean that they are a Gemini or a Cancer or whatever the case might be. And, people just tend to hyper focus on their sun sign and nothing else. And that's it. And I don't think there's like necessarily, um, anything wrong with people just looking at the sun sign, because your sun sign is, kind of your major personality traits. It doesn't necessarily sum you up as an individual, like as a whole, but it does give people a good idea of who you project yourself to be, and primarily big things about you. But I want to talk tonight about more than just the sun signs. I want to talk about how all the other planets within the natal chart make up your birth chart and make up kind of your cosmic astral footprint or fingerprint, because everyone's fingerprint is different and unique to them. So oftentimes, like, in order to really get an access and insight with your natal chart, you will need to know, obviously, your birthday. So the month that you were born in, the time that you were born, the day that you were born, the year that you were born, and typically the location as well. And there's a number of free websites that you can actually go on to. Matter of fact, let me see if I can do this here. Okay, so I was looking to see, is this that? No, that's how I share. Okay, well, I was going to screen share this, but there's a number of websites that you can go onto where you can actually access your natal chart and get insight and information on your natal chart, mostly free. Number one would be Cafe Astrology. If you go to Cafe Astrology, you will be able to type in your information, like I said, your birthday, your birth month, your birth year, and the time and location you were born, and it will come up with something kind of like this. And that's called Cafe Astrology. The other great website that you can use, which gives you a little bit more information, is called CoStar Astrology. And I'll try to link these in the description of this video when I'm done. But so CoStar Astrology, and hi Icon, thanks for joining. I know it's kind of late. Well, it's late over here, but I'm a night owl anyway, and I thrive at night. Hey, Severed Head, thanks for joining. So Cafe Astrology and CoStar Astrology are both free websites that you can access, and you can type in all your information and take a look at your natal chart. We're talking about natal charts tonight, guys. So this is a pretty standard image of an example of a natal chart. Okay. Now, to the untrained eye, or to someone who doesn't actively do natal charts, this might look kind of confusing, and understandably so, right? What we have going on here, of course, are the zodiacs, and then we also have our planets. Like we have, the moon and the sun, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Neptune, Pluto. So that's what it'll look like. Now, this is the traditional layout of a natal chart, and this is a chart that you will be able to access on those websites that I was telling you about. Now, a newer version of that chart looks like this, and this is more of a natal graph. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but it has a graph, and on this side it says thinking, on this side it says feeling. And then down here it's introverted, and up here it's extroverted. So all of the planetary signs associated with those zodiacs will fall into a place here on this graph. And that could be another way that you can actually read a natal chart. Now, this is a newer method of reading natal charts, and some people prefer this method and some people prefer this method, but both methods are great. However, in order to read a natal chart, you have to understand what you're looking at. So, and that's what I was talking about with one of my clients earlier when I was reading their natal chart, because they came to me and booked a natal chart reading with me, which I was excited about, but they also wanted to learn how to read natal charts themselves. And I'm all for sharing knowledge and sharing your education and your talents and your skills. And I believe in paying it forward and passing that along. And it was really cute because she actually left a review on my business page saying, like, after she left, she felt like she could read natal charts. And I thought that was so cool that I was able to kind of express to her within our session how she can do this herself. So I'm going to be sharing everything I told her, minus I'm not going to be sharing her specific natal chart reading. I will reference her natal chart kind of as an example, but we're not going to go into her business like that on YouTube Live. Okay, so let's talk about the most important things to look at when you're looking at a natal chart. So, like I said, you'll find something similar to this, okay, when you're looking at natal charts. And obviously, the first thing you're going to look at is the sun sign. And 9 times out of 10, the person already knows their sun sign. The sun sign is your primary characteristics. Your sun sign is kind of who you project yourself to be. Your sun sign is who the outward world sees. So, for example, let's say your sun sign is, okay, I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm going to use myself. So I'm a Libra is my sun sign. And that's an air sign. It's the sign of balance. And this, the mantra, because all of the zodiacs have a mantra associated with them. The mantra that is associated with Libra is I balance or I understand. And that is something very typical to Libra. It's the scales, it's the lover sign, it's influenced by Venus. So that would be, my primary characteristics. Okay, so then you have your moon sign. And your moon sign, it is believed that your moon sign is kind of like your inner self, your emotional side, and the side of you that not everyone sees. So that is going to look different, just like the sun sign will, depending on where the moon falls into. So like if we're looking at a chart here, okay, the moon sign is this little crescent moon. The sun sign, this is funny, but I always say it kind of looks like a titty because it's like a nipple and like, yeah, okay. Kind of crude, but so the moon sign is obviously the crescent moon. So as an example, this person's moon sign would be a Scorpio moon. So what that could mean is that they maybe hold some grudges. Maybe they're extremely passionate, maybe extremely sexual, maybe they enjoy vices, that's their moon sign. That might be the side of them that not everyone gets to see. So then you have what's called, you have your rising sign. Now, your rising sign is kind of how other people perceive you to be and kind of like what you're influenced by. That's also important. So if your rising sign is, let's say, Cancer, then people might perceive you to be maybe overly emotional or very nurturing or hard on your sleeve kind of person. But that's how you're perceived to be. Same thing with your sun sign. You project that and people see what you're projecting. Now, you also have what's called the inner planets. The inner planets would be Mercury, Venus, and Mars. All of the planets are, of course, named after gods. So Mercury or Hermes, Greco-Roman, would be kind of that god of communication. And that planet is heavily associated with the element of air. Air has to do with the mind, communication, intuition, the crown, the third eye, the throat, chakras. So Mercury is going to fall also under various zodiacs. Now, I do have this image I'll share too, and I shared this with my client as well. So the different planets are going to fall in various houses, okay? And this chart is very similar to like this chart. So if you picture like, Scorpio, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn as all like little slices of pie, those are the houses. And this is where some people get really lost when it comes to natal charts. So I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. But the houses are basically like aspects of the zodiac. So if your moon falls in Scorpio, that would be the house of Scorpio. And the house of Scorpio operates like you would expect the kind of traditional description of Scorpio to be. So I'm going to show you guys a few examples here on this graph. So for instance, you have Aries, right? That's the first of the zodiac wheel. Pisces is the end. Aries is the beginning. Now, the way the zodiacs go in order don't match up with our Gregorian calendar. So you have to kind of shift your perspective of the order of the zodiacs because it does not start in January with Capricorn and end in December with Sagittarius. It starts with Aries and ends in Pisces. Aries is the first of the zodiacs, and their mantra is I am, ruled by Mars. And the house of Aries would have to do with your personality, your appearance, your temperament, things like that. Versus, the house of Scorpio has to do with death and regeneration and sex and vices and desire. So depending upon the planets that they fall into those different houses, it creates kind of a whole different definition. For instance, Mercury is the communication sign. So if Mercury falls under a zodiac that is aquatic, like Cancer or Pisces or Scorpio, that person is going to be more of a emotional based communicator, versus if you have someone who, let's say, is Earth, their Mercury is in an Earth sign, like Virgo or Taurus, they're going to be more of a grounded, stable, steady communicator. Their communications may even foster growth, right? So, and it's going to look slightly different depending on which particular house. So, when I talk about astrology, I like to always just say that you have 4 elemental kingdoms: earth, air, fire, and water. These are the elemental kingdoms. Within each elemental kingdom, you have 3 houses. Okay. So with the elemental kingdom of fire, you're going to have the house of Aries, the house of Sagittarius, and the house of Leo. With the elemental kingdom of air, you're going to have the house of Libra, the house of Aquarius, the house of Gemini, and so on and so forth. Okay. So when the planets fall into different houses, it's basically just saying which aspect of the zodiac is this planet in. So, okay, you have your sun, your moon, your rising. You have your inner planets, which your sun, your moon, or your rising, I would say, would be the key focus of a natal chart. Your inner planets are how you A, communicate through Mercury, B, how you love, what you love, why you love through Venus or Aphrodite, okay, and Mars. That would have to do with conflict, okay? So that's your inner, those are called the inner planets. They're closer to the sun, they hold more influence, and they transition through the zodiacs much quicker than others do. For instance, your rising sign can, let's say you and your friend are both Leos, but one of you is born, let's say, August 18th at 4:48, and the other one of you is also born August 18th, but at 4:59. You guys are going to have different rising signs. That's how quickly the rising sign transitions. Mercury transitions pretty quickly as well. The closer the planets are to the sun, the quicker they transition from zodiac to zodiac. So Mercury, like I said, has to do with communication. So when you're looking at someone's zodiac, pay attention to that, because that will tell you how they communicate and how they like to be communicated to. Someone who, like I said, has a Mercury in an aquatic sign is going to want to communicate emotionally and from a heart space, and want to be met in that kind of mindset. Okay. Venus is how you love, what you love, why you love, who you love. It's all about love and romance and relationships. That can be platonic or romantic, like I mentioned. Okay. So if you have Venus, if you have Venus in a fire zodiac, or the kingdom of fire, that's going to be very different than if you have Venus in air. So once you kind of start getting the hang of it, you'll be able to read a natal chart like that. And like I said, Mars has to do with conflict. So if you have Mars in Aries, they're probably going to be maybe a little immature when it comes to conflict, or explosive, or want to butt heads like a ram. Versus if you have, let's say, Mars in Pisces, they're probably going to shy away from conflict more, and not really be into confrontation. So each of these planets play a small aspect of, I would say, a piece of the pie, so to speak, of someone's personality and their life. Okay. Now, moving forward, after Mars, we are going to have what's called the social planets. And there are 2 social planets. And these planets are called the social planets because they say less about, I would say, who you are, and more about what you feel or think. So the social planets would be Saturn and Jupiter. Okay. Sorry, I just got a message on my phone. So the social planets are going to represent the who and the what that it is that you believe in, you stand for. So there's just two of those. And Jupiter is, it rules over like growth and expansion. Okay. And also progress. And the key word to understanding Jupiter is philosophy. That's the key word to Jupiter, is philosophy. So what is philosophy? This has to do with how you live your life and what you believe in. Okay. So if Jupiter, let's take a look at this little handy dandy graph here. If Jupiter is going to fall in a Capricorn, okay, in the house of Capricorn, house being the specific part of the kingdom of Earth, right? We're in the kingdom of Earth, but in the house of Capricorn. Let's say that's where your Jupiter falls. Chances are your philosophy is going to be career driven, money motivated, centered around success, because these are all very Capricorn traits. So, to quote Cardi B, money moves, essentially. So moving into Saturn, that has to do with traditions and boundaries, okay? Boundaries as in where you draw the line. What is off limits? Let's say Capricorn again, okay? Let's say that your Saturn is in Capricorn. Your boundaries are going to be don't mess with your job. Don't mess with your money. Don't mess with your finances. Don't mess with that stability. That's a boundary for Saturn. Okay, so those are the social planets. So that has to do with your philosophy and your boundaries. And that is absolutely a big part of who someone is, their philosophy, kind of what they live their life by, and their personal boundaries and what they value. But it's not necessarily talking about the basics. The basics would be how they communicate, how they love, and how they fight. And also, I want to say too, with Venus, not only do you have how you love, but it's that romance. And it's also the love for friends, family, and platonic and romantic partnerships. Mars is, for lack of a better way to say this, and I know that YouTube's not going to be happy about me saying it this way, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay? I'm going to say it anyway. Mars is about fighting and fucking, for lack of a better way to say that. Okay? So, and then your social planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are about your personal philosophy, your personal boundaries, is what the social planets have to do with. So moving outside of that, this is where people sometimes tend to get a little bit checked out, because now we're moving into the outer planets. So we have Neptune, okay, Uranus, and Pluto. And this is where people kind of tend to get a little bit checked out, because these planets are going to orbit through different zodiacs at a much slower rate, For instance, Pluto only transitions from one zodiac to the next every 15 years. And then for the other two, you have every 7 years and every 12 years. Okay. So these planets are going to have a lot more to do with your generation, and a group of people as a whole than you personally. Okay. Than you personally. So when we're talking about these outer planets, I think, they are equally as important as the other aspects. Welcome back, Severed Head. Thanks for hanging out. What are you drinking? I'm just drinking like a lemon basil water. But when we're talking about these outer planets, we've moved past the social planets. So if you guys need me to repeat anything, you just let me know and I'll take it back a little bit. But in the outer planets, first we're going to be dealing with Uranus, okay, or Uranus. And, this is going to have to do with your own changes from generation to generation. So like, for instance, the generation of the baby boomers versus the millennials, we're talking about stereotypical aspects of change from one generation to the other when we're talking about Uranus. Okay. And then the next outer planet would be Neptune. And Neptune, or Poseidon, okay, has to do with your generation's dreams. And remember, Neptune only moves from one zodiac to the next every 12 years. So this is not talking about, like, let's say you're looking at a specific person's natal chart. This is not going to be talking about their specific dreams. This is going to be talking about their generation's dreams as a whole. And then Pluto being the last planet, that only transitions from zodiac to zodiac every 15 years. So you're dealing with a large group of people here when we're talking about Pluto. Okay. So Pluto has to do with more of a generation's psyche and more of a generation's mindset. Okay. So let's recap a little bit of all of the planets, because we're talking about how to get the basics of a natal chart. So that way you can look at something like this and be able to look at it and, okay, yep, and understand it. Okay. So the sun is your primary characteristics. It's who you project. Most people are familiar with their sun sign. Your moon sign are your secondary characteristics, your emotions, your heart space, and the aspect of you that is not projected. It's your passive personality, archetypal characteristics. Your rising sign is oftentimes who people perceive you to be before they meet you. It could be the energy that you put off, and it can also lead you to what you are influenced by. Those first three, your sun, your moon, your rising, are really, I would say, a key highlight of a natal chart. I know that me personally, when I'm looking at someone's natal chart, the first thing that I look at is those three things, and especially someone's moon sign, because their moon sign is what you might not see. The sun, everyone sees the sun, not everyone sees the moon. So definitely pay close attention to that, to the person's moon sign. Okay. After that, you have the inner planets, right? So Mercury, how we communicate, Venus, how we love, and Mars, our conflict. Those are absolutely fundamentally part of someone's personality without a question or a doubt. Hands down, it is what it is. Okay. So those are key to pay attention to as well. So those top five, sun, moon, rising, top six, I guess I should say, sun, moon, rising. Okay. Mercury, Venus, Mars are what really describe a good picture of a person. Now, your social planets, your Jupiter has to do with your philosophy, your personal philosophy on life, what you feel fueled by, okay? And your Saturn has to do with your personal boundaries, where you draw the line in the sand, okay? Okay, okay, okay. I need to stop saying that. So after those social planets, you have the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. These have to do more with a generation than a specific person. So when we're talking about these planets, we are talking about the psyche of a generation for Pluto, the dreams of a generation for Neptune. Okay, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Alrighty. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for joining. Okay, I'm wondering how much influence planets and stars outside of our solar system have on us, or even black holes. Severed Head, I think that's a really good question. And I think that's definitely something that, like, people don't often think about. I mean, it's kind of my opinion and my belief that things closer to us hold more impact than things further away from us. For instance, Pluto has to do with more of a generation of people versus the inner planets deal with you on a specific level. So I'm sure that things further away are going to have less of an influence. And I would even think that it would get to a certain point where it goes from the particular person to their mindset, how they communicate, how they love, how they fight, their philosophy, their boundaries, their, dreams, their psyche. And the outer planets have to do with the generation. So as it gets further away, that could have to do with the species as a whole. That's my take on that. Melinda. Hello, Melinda. I hope you're doing well. All three of mine are in Virgo. Are we talking about your inner planets or your outer planets? Are we talking about Venus, Mercury, and Mars? Or are we talking about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto? I'm assuming we're talking about the inner planets. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because on this example here that I have, we have Venus, Mars, and Mercury all also in Virgo. Okay, you're talking about your sun, moon, and rising. Wow. That's a lot of Virgo. But hey, I get down with Virgo. I jig Virgo. Hey, Carol, thanks for joining. I bet it is late there. Goodness. Get you some sleep. Thank you, Severed Head. I'm just trying to I know that natal charts can be super daunting and overwhelming for people. And a lot of times when you go onto these websites and you type in your information, it'll give you a graph of your natal chart, but it won't exactly break everything down into easy to understand terms. And people get really confused when they start hearing, houses and these different planets and inner planets, outer planets, social planets, and what those mean, So, and after my session tonight with my client, and after she left that review saying she feels like after getting this first natal chart, she's ready to go out and read these natal charts, I was like, let me hop on this live on my channel and share a little bit about how to break down a natal chart, because I think it's a great resource to be able to have and to do for yourself and for others. Exactly. Okay, so Severed Head says, so what is a house specifically? Like, how would you define it? How is one house distinguished from another? That's a great question. So basically, the house is the zodiac. So these words and these terms are synonymous and they mean the same thing. So when we say, because learning natal charts, learning astrology is just like learning tarot. These are languages. So you might not necessarily learn them overnight, but you can get a pretty good idea of a basic understanding. So house and zodiac, those are synonymous. So when we're talking about, oh, her Mercury is in the house of Virgo, what we're talking about is what zodiac Mercury was in when she was born. So for instance, my sun is in the house of Libra. So this graph here, which if you just simply go onto Google and type in natal chart zodiac house graph and go to Google Images, you will find something similar to this. This will break down each house of the zodiac. House being like Capricorn, Pisces, so forth and so forth. So how I like to explain it is in astrology, within the stars, okay, you have 4 elemental kingdoms: earth, air, fire, and water. Okay. Within those 4 elemental kingdoms, you have 3 houses or 3 sections within the kingdom. So, for instance, the kingdom of Earth is going to have a house of Capricorn, a house of Taurus, and a house of Virgo. Those 3 houses are going to be fundamentally different from each other. A Virgo is not a Taurus, and a Taurus is not a Capricorn. Yes. Yes. The sun, yes. So a house is like what sun sign is a house, a planet in when you were born. Yes. So if what your sun sign is, it was in that house when you were born. So I was born September 27th. So my sun sign is a Libra. So, and like I said, moving on to the other kingdoms, like the kingdom of fire is going to have the house of Sagittarius, the house of Leo, and the house of Aries. And those are all going to be different from each other as well. And even if you just think about their mantras, each zodiac's mantra, the mantra for Sagittarius is I conquer. The mantra for Leo is I lead. The mantra for Aries is I am. So you're going to have 3 different perspectives there within the same element, but kind of being channeled through different ways. So when you say, when you're looking at a natal chart and you're like, okay, so Mercury is in the house of Cancer, you're going to be looking at how you communicate through the lens of Cancer. Severed Head, I'm glad that you joined then. It was meant to be. It was meant to be. I hope that me breaking this down has helped a little bit with how to learn to break down natal charts. And this is a super basic introduction, but it's a great way to get started. And the best way, hands down, guys, to learn how to do natal charts is just to jump right in and to not let yourself get overwhelmed. If you have to take your natal chart, I would definitely start with your own. If you guys haven't already, get your natal chart, go online, I'm going to post these links actually in this chat. Hold on a second. So the first one I'm going to be sharing is the co-star astrology. Let's see if I can post this link. Cool. So co-star astrology. Now co-star astrology, when you go on there, you're going to type in your birthday, the time you were born, the day you were born, the location, all of that fun stuff. It is absolutely critical that you guys know what time you were born down to the exact minute. Okay. So if you need to ask your mama, ask your mama. But it is critical that you know what time you were born. If you don't know the exact time, try to at least get it within that hour. Well, good. I'm glad that you joined. I'm glad that you joined, Severed Head. I didn't think about that, but yeah, Melinda, you can access your birth time usually on your birth certificate. So on CoStar Astrology, that's the website that I posted down below. What you're going to do is you're going to put, like I said, they might ask for your name and your birthday and the time you were born, location, all that fun stuff. Now, CoStar Astrology will ask you for an email address, and you, I believe, do have to provide them with an email address in order to access your natal chart, and they will send you daily horoscopes. So be prepared if you don't want that to opt out of that after, or give them like an email address you never use. But on CoStar Astrology, you will have access to the old school chart like this, okay? And this is what most people think of and see when they're looking at a natal chart, okay? And the different houses are right here. So as you can see, this person has their moon sign in Scorpio. okay? And their Pluto in Scorpio. Or as you can see here in the house of Virgo, this person is also having their inner planets in Virgo. So that would be the house of Virgo. So their sun, or not their sun, their Mercury, their Venus, and their Mars is in the house of Virgo. Now, also on CoStar Astrology, you can look at that graph I just showed you, or you can also look at a graph like this, which these are both the same people, but this is a different type of graph, and this is a little bit less intimidating because it breaks down on one side. Let's say the West is thinking, the East is feeling. So if stuff is on more one side than the other, that's going to be emotions and logic. And then at the top, you have extrovert. At the bottom, you have introvert. So that's going to be more one side or the other. So this person is more on the extroverted thinking than the extroverted feeling side. So that's another way that you can access this. And then when we're talking about specific houses and how the zodiac affects the astrology of it, this was the chart that I was showing, that I was talking about and showing you guys, which if you guys just go onto Google and type in, natal chart, zodiac houses graph, you should be able to find this. But whenever I'm doing a natal chart reading for my clients, I make sure that I have their natal chart printed out and I give this to them for them to take home. I also have this natal chart, which is a little bit easier for someone who's not as familiar with looking at natal charts to be able to look at and get a little bit more instant information from. So they take both of those home. And then I like to have this, which I have a copy for myself, but I always provide the client with a copy as well. That way they can look at it themselves while going through the reading and be like, okay, because if you're going to give someone a natal chart reading who does not know how to read natal charts, what you are doing is speaking Arabic to someone who can only speak Japanese. They're not going to understand what you're talking about because they don't know that language. So if you pull up someone's natal chart, like let's say you are really into natal chart readings and you like reading these and you're talking with one of your favorite coworkers or a good friend and you're like, hey, what's your birthday? What time were you born? Da 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 XYZ. You pull up their natal chart and they have never seen one of these before, nor do they know how to read them. And you're just looking at this and you're saying, okay, so your sun's in Capricorn, so that means blah, 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 blah. And your moon's in the house of Sagittarius, so that means X, Y, and Z. And your Pluto's here and your Mars is there. And your philosophy with Jupiter is in Aries, so that means this. And then your personal boundaries are in Aquarius, but your rising sign is a Leo. Like they are not going to understand what you're talking about. They're not going to understand what you mean by their rising sign is in Leo or their Venus is in the house of Virgo. They're going to be like, okay, I don't get it. I don't understand what you're talking about. So really make sure that you really get the basics down and you kind of educate people during the natal chart reading. That way, if they are unfamiliar, they can still keep up with what you're saying. Because you don't want to just lose people throughout the reading because they're just going to check out. And you also don't want to overwhelm people. And natal charts can be very overwhelming. So it's easy to overwhelm someone with a natal chart because you're getting all this information all at once. So I guess I will open it up for additional questions. That's kind of what I wanted to put out there today about natal charts. Hey, Doofy the hyena. I'm just opening it up for questions. If you guys have any questions. I have spent the past 44 minutes breaking down a natal chart. The basics, I will say. This is an astrology conversation on natal charts. However, asteroids do and can play a part. Okay, so when we're talking about ascension and enlightenment and raising consciousness and raising vibration, what I feel, this is my opinion on this, is that the process of the natal chart, specifically your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign, says a lot about who you are, how you feel, how you project, how you are on the inside, how people perceive you. But it also kind of talks about life purposes. There's also a big belief that your rising sign is your past life sign. Like I said, we were just gonna kind of talk about the basics of it tonight. A rising sign, Doofy, is how the rising sign is what you're influenced by and how people perceive you. The sun sign is your primary personality characteristics and how you kind of project. And your moon sign has to do with your inner self, your subconscious, and your emotions. So those are three different big aspects of your personality. I like hyenas too. I was just thinking that severed. So there's also a belief. I'm not saying this is my opinion or perspective, but there's also a belief that, the zodiacs essentially go from start to finish, and they start with Aries and end on Pisces. They start with Aries and end on Pisces. So there's a belief that people who are born throughout that process, it's a chronological reincarnation. So the beginning of the incarnation, the person would be born under the sign of Aries. And as they progress through lifetimes, they work their way to Pisces. I'm not saying that is what I think. I'm just sharing what other people tend to believe about linear concepts when it comes to astrology and natal chart. Yes, a lot of people claim that your rising sign is your astrological sign from your past life. And that's why people who don't know you, that's why people who don't know you tend to see and perceive you that way. Let's say your sun sign is a Leo, okay, but your rising sign is an Aries. They're going to people who don't know you are going to perceive you more as an Aries, maybe a little bit more bullheaded, stubborn, fiery, compulsive, artistic, sticking up for the underdog, than they are anything else. They might not see your Leo sun. People who don't know you might look at you and perceive you to be that Aries because that's what you were in a past life. Oh, yeah. See, and that's where people, I think, really get disconnected when it comes to astrology, is because they just look at their sun sign. And your sun sign is not the sum of who you are, it's who you might project yourself to be. And your sun sign is also who, like your primary characteristics. So, as a Libra, your primary characteristics are that you might be passionate because it's a sign of the lovers, fair, just, diplomatic, good communicator. Yes. Yeah. In a way, your sun sign is, it's also who you project. It's your sun sign is very much your ego. And like we talked about too, your sun is going to be your ego. Your sun is going to be who you project, who you want to be. You know, the sun sign is going to be the sign that everyone who knows you sees. Your moon sign is going to be your secondary characteristics. So, like version 2 of you, and your hidden self and your emotions and your subconscious. So, um, if your moon is in Scorpio, that could indicate kind of how that plays in. Or if your rising sign is a Scorpio, or if you have a lot of Scorpio in your chart, you're probably going to feel more at home within the aquatic kingdom, specifically the house of Scorpio. Yes, Melinda. Yes. A double Gemini, but his rising is in Virgo and he has a lot of Virgo traits. I believe it. I believe it. I believe it. And another thing I want to add too, when you guys are looking at natal charts, is don't only look at what planets the houses are in. So don't only look at where Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Sun, Moon, rising. Don't only just look at those, also look at what houses are empty, because that'll also tell you a lot about a person. And maybe, if you guys want, if you guys are interested, I can make more than just one of these natal chart lives. Or it might not be a live. I might just make a pre-recorded video. I can't necessarily promise it'll be a live, but if you guys are interested in that, I can definitely kind of add another layer onto this conversation. But I just kind of wanted to get into the basics of it tonight. But also pay attention to where houses are empty. For instance, if you're looking at someone's natal chart and they have nothing in Libra, that has the sign about relationships and romance. It's the lover sign, it's the fairness sign. So that could show that there could be some issues there. Not necessarily um, like in a bad way, but more so just in a way to pay attention to. Also, if you're looking at someone's natal chart and let's say they completely lack one of the 4 elements, they don't have anything in any of the 3 elemental houses. Like, let's say you're looking at someone's natal chart and they have nothing in the earth kingdom. Okay. That is going to also speak leaps and bounds about that person, not in a bad way or a good way. And what I'm getting at here is that when planets are within houses, that's talking about fate and destiny. When houses are empty, that's focusing on free will. So that has to do more with opportunity and choice versus what's destined to be. If you have a planet in a house, you have doors opening for you in that aspect. If you don't have a planet in that house, you're going to have to go out and open those doors and unlock them with a key you find yourself. These are great questions, guys. I'm looking at these comments right now. Definitely, severed, try to figure out the exact time that you were born. If you have anyone that you can ask, or if you can find your birth certificate, that would be key. Because, like I said earlier, your rising sign can completely change within minutes. Melinda, I can definitely make a video about north nodes and south nodes. And that's probably going to have to be its own conversation. Hi Kasha Loki Morgan. Thanks for joining. I'm just answering some questions before I hop off of here. I'm sorry. I don't know if you missed it or not. But this video will be uploaded and you guys can always watch it back. I was just breaking down the basics of natal charts and now I'm just answering questions. I kind of see eclipses the same way. I view them as a way to kind of chart time and also as an omen of change and progress. And depending on like what the topic is, like if we're talking about spell work or astrology, I'm going to come from a different place on that. But since we're in the realm of natal charts and eclipses, I think that could have to do with foreshadowing and blockage and illumination. So, and let me post this here as well. So off of YouTube, if you guys are interested in getting a hold of me, I'm posting this link down here. This is a link to my business, Third Eye Fortunes. And this is also where, if you are interested, you can book a one-on-one session with me for a natal chart reading. You can check out some of my reviews, or you can just like my page and follow my posts if you guys are on Facebook, and you'll get updates and notifications of what I'm doing. And I post stuff about astrology on that page, as well as like basics and learning tarot. And I post some educational stuff, and I also add sales onto the page as well, where I have discounted services. And I'll also be posting where Third Eye Fortunes will be being at festivals. So when we have a tent popped up not random, I shouldn't say random, but at various is the word I should have said, at various festivals, you'll be notified before the festival even starts. For instance, we'll be at the Indianapolis Pagan Pride Festival. Third Eye Fortunes will be representing down there. We'll be doing tarot readings, oracle readings, palm readings, cartomancy readings. I'll be sponsoring some local artists and selling some of their paintings. I'm also going to have a performer at my tent this year, which I'm super excited about. So if you guys are in the Midwest and you want to check out a really bomb pagan pride, come to the Indianapolis Pagan Pride. This will be their 23rd year in the running. It is one of the larger pagan prides in the States, believe it or not. So if you feel like you're up for a road trip or in the local area, check it out. It's free to attend. They just ask for donations for the Humane Society. So, but yeah, check out my business page. Or like I said, if you're not interested in a service, that's fine. You can always like the page to follow what I post, and feel free to message me your questions or video requests on there, or you can leave them down below in the comments. I am going to be hopping off. So I hope all of you guys have a great rest of your night. I'm probably getting ready to call tonight here myself. Oh, when am I coming to Cali? Hopefully soon, Kasha. Hopefully soon. I love Cali. Love the whole West Coast, honestly. So stay updated, because maybe Third Eye Fortunes will be coming to Cali near you soon. Alrighty, guys. Well, I've had a lot of fun. I'm going to sign off of here. It's like past 1 o'clock in the morning where I'm at. So, well, thank you, Severed Head, for joining. Thank you. I appreciate all of you guys who hopped on my live here tonight and just listened to my late night ramble. Okay? All right. Blessings to you too, Kasha. You guys have a great rest of your night. And I will probably have to make my totally go to sleep. All right, Melinda. Thanks for joining, hun. We'll talk about natal charts another time, y'all. Your toddler. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll definitely make another video regarding natal charts. And if you guys have any specific questions, you can always message me on Third Eye Fortunes. Okay. You guys have a great rest of your evening. I'm logging off for real. Okay. Love you guys. Bye.